Good afternoon. This is Media Center Ukraine, Odessa, and our next briefing is the briefing of a volunteer, Katerina Nazhevnikova, about why the public money should not be spent on non-critical needs during the war. At least this is how we understood the general message of Katerina in her posts on Facebook. I would like to give floor to Katerina. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, I would like to say that it is difficult for me to talk publicly against the media because I'm an introvert person, and it is more important for me to work now to help our armed forces. But perhaps now it is time when we cannot remain silent anymore, because the first year or even more we did not comment upon anything, and by we I mean the whole volunteer society, about the problems which have in our state, in the armed forces, because we're afraid that this could be used, first of all, by our enemy. But time passes by, and we now understand that the enemy does not need any information from us, because they generate a lot of fakes by themselves. But our internal enemy sees that the society does not follow what is going on, and they continue to what they did before the war, but the scale is much bigger now. And I think that during the war, this could be considered a military crime. I prepared a speech, and would like to say that I will need to read it, because usually I'm a very emotional person, but here I need to share precise numbers and to have an official statement, because now I'm going to address the representatives of government and to the President of Ukraine. Good day, my name is Katerina Nazhevnikova. I'm the head of the Monsters Corporation Foundation, and since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we have been helming the armed forces of Ukraine, but we work in the Odessa region for more than 7 years. Since 2022, the amount of the support was for more than 250 million hryvnias, so we did not lose the war as it was seen by our enemy. This thanks to the armed forces of Ukraine and the efforts by the society. But now we need to have quick changes of the state policy, not to lose the war in 3 years, because Russia has recovered after the first day of the first year of the full-scale invasion, and now they have been developing their industrial military complex. The sanctions do not work as expected, and there are hundreds and thousands of drones, new drones that have been manufactured under the sanctions, and thousands of missiles attack our cities and our army every night. Despite significant losses, we need to understand that the front line does not move a lot for the last 10 months. And this is not because our army is bad, but because of the Russia's fortification, which is very condensed. And if the situation will be unchanged in 3 years, if we do not focus all the resources of the state on the victory, this line could be brought closer to Odessa in particular. There is a long-term and protracted war to exhaust human, economic, and military potential. If we do not prioritize all budget expenditures at all levels, in particular the state budget, the Odessa regional budget, and the budget of the city of Odessa, and ensure effective control over the use of these funds, in particular with involvement of the public, we will have significant problems. The state, under the control of the public, should leave critical expenditures on energy, healthcare, education, critical infrastructure support for the functioning of the economy, pension payments to ordinary pensioners, and not those crazy payments to judges and other categories, and all other resources with the repairs of secondary roads, theaters, stadiums, courts, some senseless regional programs, purchase of frame for some greetings, and other unnecessary expenses to be directed to the defense forces. Today, I am addressing, first of all, the President of Ukraine, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the Verkhovna Rada, the Cabinet of Ministers, the deputies of local councils, and the entire government, with a demand for urgent changes to the budget code of Ukraine, budgets of local self-government bodies, tax and customs codes, to the law on the budget for 2023, and the drafting of the law for 2024, in which a strict sequestration will be carried out and the allocation of truly priority expenditures for the critical needs of the Ukrainian people at the expenses of macro-financial assistance from partners in the direction of all our revenues to the defense forces. When it comes to local budgets, quite often we hear from local authorities that they are not authorized to spend money from local budgets to support the armed forces of Ukraine. But we can see a lot of examples of cities and towns and villages that this is possible. The local budgets are created through several mechanisms. Local budgets can also receive subsidies and subventions from the state. This is up for local council to decide what exactly to spend money on and records the decision in its budget. There are actually no regulatory restrictions on the types of expenses. So hypothetically, local deputies can spend money on anything in order for this decision, but they need to approve the decision at the council session. In addition, changes to the budget can be made throughout the year. For example, a new expenses item may appear. Funds may be transferred from one item to another. The local council can also buy drones, tourniquets, and everything which is needed by our army. But in this case, in addition to desire, to the willingness, we need courage, since there is a higher probability that the state auditors will ask on what basis the drones that were handed over to the military were purchased, and can say that such purchase is an appropriate use of funds. I call on such courage and the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine to immediately change the legislation which would make such unreasonable pressure by law enforcement agencies impossible. The general fund of all local budget in the first half of the year received 218.3 billion hryvnias, which is 24.2% more than in the same period of 2022. 145 billion hryvnias, this is personal income tax that was received from our military. Some deputies of local authorities, including Odessa City Council, Odessa Regional Council, mayors of the cities, including the mayor of Odessa, as I see it, they are a bit lost in reality. They don't understand what has been happening on the front line and what is the price that we have been paying to hold the front line where it is. And I would like to make the specific examples. To reconstruct the premises of the court, 106 billion hryvnias were allocated when it comes to the local council, and to the reconstruct the theater of children audience, 31 billion were provided. 106 billion hryvnias is 200,000 tourniquets. Just think about this number. Every tourniquet is someone's saved life. Because if our servicemen at the front line do not have quality tourniquet, they cannot save them themselves when it is needed. After inability to vote by the local authorities, the assistant to the mayor, Filatov, told us that they're not talking about 106 billions, but only about 10 billions, that this is very needed for prisoners that will be the part of the court proceedings after the war, those who will be prosecuted after the war. I think that this is a bad manipulation, because if we are now talking about the conditions of future prisoners, and we do not care about the conditions of our military protecting us and our country and our city in particular, then this argument is just a manipulation. Saying that only 10 billion will be allocated for the reconstruction of the court. So after the war, we will just finish the construction of the mentioned court. But perhaps we're missing something. Perhaps our city council knows better when the war is over. Because they say that now we need to dig for the basement of the court and to finish the court after the war is over. And I think that this is actually just not respecting the society, which is frustrated with these procurement procedures. As for the theater, the Department of the Capital Construction and the Roads of Odessa announced auction to reconstruct the theater, the children's theater. And again, the amount is huge. And if we just calculate the amount of tourniquets and drones that we can buy for that, and we are not the Russian Federation, we should fight with technologies and not with people, because without UAVs, no surveillance is possible, because without UAVs, it is impossible to correct artillery. So without FPV drones, we need to send people there just for death. Because this reconnaissance can be done with the help of FPV drones, and there is a huge demand for such UAVs now at the front line. And now they are bought only through charitable foundations. And I'm not Churchill, but I believe that it is, of course, important to support culture during the war. But this is not about reconstructing facades of buildings. They don't think about other sectors because they do not increase their salary. Because, to be honest, this theater is dying at the moment because people do not go there during the war. But now our authorities try to do something to get money for themselves. And just to summarize, if the provision of the armed forces continues as it is now, if the local self-government bodies do not stop spending money on non-critical expenses, there are risks that in just a year we, Odessans volunteers, will be judged in this Kiev district court as Nazis, and on the stage of that children's theater will be performances about the greatness of Pete. And so we also need the development, we need to update legislation to provide the best resources to the armed forces of Ukraine. The current legislative framework with extremely bureaucratized processes of accounting and reporting, writing of the laws lead both to huge corruption with monetary support, fuel and lubricant materials, and to the fact that the military does not write reports and requests to the relevant commands or support services. That is, they do not contact the state, but turn to volunteers. All this must be settled immediately, because we need to establish the effective public control, both at the state level and at the level of specific military branches, commands, groups, and specific brigades and battalions. We still have servicemen, wounded or injured servicemen who are beyond the staff, who still receive salary of 800 hryvnias, despite the fact that Verkhovna Rada 2 months ago voted to increase the minimum level to 20,000 hryvnias. But 2 months have passed and there are no changes. I would also like to say, using the example, during the COVID pandemic, we already faced the situation when local authorities did not perceive information from the volunteers, from the society, that something was wrong. And back then, we lost around 6 months just trying to get reach to local authorities to explain that there is a lack of oxygen and that we would face significant problems with at the highest COVID patients. 6,000 patients received oxygen from us at home because there was no enough beds and oxygen in hospitals. And now we are facing the same situation. The Odessa budget has a very interesting amount, which is 105 millions that have been allocated for the repair of lifts. On my way here to you, I have received a message in Russian language, and I will read it in Russian. Good afternoon, Catherine. I do not know if you will support us, but we will try to do it because in 2020 you helped us a lot, our family. The situation is the following. And there is the address, and Russian drone just was downed in the yard of our city and damaging our house. A month later, on the 4th of July, the Commission stopped the operation of lifts, and we addressed numerous times to the local and Ukrainian authorities, but the situation isn't changed. After 2 months, no results of our requests. I'm now on the 7th month, and we also have other pregnant women, families with children. We are on the 10th floor, and it is very difficult to climb there without lifts because we are pregnant. After attack and Russia's shelling, we were able to repair windows, but we cannot repair our lift ourselves. And so there is a request to us to support such people. And I think that such messages show the real work of our local authorities. So every day they report about their success, but it is not there. Every day we see some reports, but there are no numbers. Usually we can see some photos, they provide some information to the public, but when you face just ordinary people, we can see that there are no real results. And now I call on the president of the country, the Verkhovna Rada, to immediately direct efforts to immediately change the state policy and the control of their implementation. I call on the head of the Odessa military administration to urgently, in detail, explain to the public which items of expenses of the local budget funds have been directed to, which were recently transferred to the regional budget in accordance with the letter of the military administration. And this information should be provided as soon as possible to explain what this money will be spent for. Now I would like to call on the Odessa Regional Council, the chairman Grigory Didenko, the Odessa City Council Gennady Trukhanov, the mayors of the cities of the Odessa region, in particular Chornomorsk, to immediately hold sessions of the relevant councils in September on the issue of sequestration of budget, changes in budgets, and the direction of all expenditures except for critical items to the defense forces. Are there any questions? Good afternoon. Does the mic work? Yes. You've already told about your statement, which is not a petition, and so it has been properly prepared. There is the sequestration of the budget mentioned, and now there are the activists dealing with tenders. So we should be more precise about that. And the budget is a very difficult topic. It is, and what results do you expect? What will be satisfactory to you as a result? Because now you are calling for them to organize sessions, and it is obvious that they will ignore your requirements. This is the first question. And the second question, there could be a satisfactory result at the local level, and it could be a good example of other cities, and it will be returned to Odessa like it was during Maidan times when different groups affected each other. And the second question, does any representative of local, of the municipal or regional council have tried to contact you to just influence your work? The first question, we should always try to do something to have changes, because during the COVID pandemic, we achieved the result. Of course, I spent a lot of time and a lot of personal health for that, and it took me 6 months for the city to start buying oxygen concentrators and to install oxygen stations. But we lost 6 months, and that were thousands of lives. But we achieved the result, because now we need to call for authorities to take actions. Every day in the morning, I go to the city council. I could spend only 1 hour there because I need to work, because I need to get back to our foundation, because we work without any free days for 3 years, because first we had the COVID pandemic, then we had the full-scale invasion. But at least I will not be embarrassed for being silent, even if there will be no result, because I at least try to do something. I cannot understand how we can have people that during the war can spend money to repair some building. This is unclear to me as to citizens, to a woman, or to a mother. Every day I see hundreds of requests from our armed forces, not only from our region, but from all over Ukraine. These are 100 of requests. This is about medical equipment for stabilization centers. This is about cars, because now our soldiers, they should carry their wounded fellow soldiers in their arms, as we used to see in movies, because there is lack of equipment, and now we need to defend, to protect those who have been defending us there. So if people, just ordinary people, will say that we're small people, we cannot do anything because this is a budget, this is a law. But the laws are created by people. We are all people, and I hope that in the Verkhovna Rada we still have some humans there. But sometimes when I look at their activities, I have some doubts about having humans there. I cannot be silent about this. And for the first times over the last 2 years, they have been changing asphalt near one of the military commissariat. And this money could be spent to save someone's life. We need to buy tourniquets. We need to support our army, because otherwise, we should be honest that not so many people are there in queues near military commissariats. Those people who joined the army last year in February, when everyone was scared, they have spent a year and a half there, those who survived, and a lot of people were killed there. And we should not pretend that this is okay to repair these administrative buildings like courts. I'm not against repairing houses, but we have some other houses in our cities that are in a very bad condition, that are going to collapse in the nearest future. People spend decades trying to get money to repair their houses, but we still have money to reconstruct the court. This is the answer to your first question. And what about the second? I've forgotten it. Have the representatives of local authorities to contact you. The mayor of the city offered to meet with me, but I cannot understand what negotiations we can have now. I would like to emphasize that I am on my rally, not as the head of the charitable foundation. I just went to the city council as the Odessa resident, as the wife of a serviceman, and I would like for them to stop such activities. And this is not only the problem for Odessa and the Odessa region. 17 million hryvnias. This is the new tender for some TV series, which is called Family Doctor. 17 billion hryvnias. Again, we can spend them on tourniquets. We don't need TV series now. Dnipro, there is 80 million tender bid for memorial to the killed heroes, fallen heroes. Memorials are very important, but after the war, because now we should take care about those who are still alive at the front line. And every day we can see thousands of such bids all over the country. And I hope that ordinary people will just go on their rallies to ask questions to their authorities. And I'm not sure that we still have some time left, but we need to do something now. Because still we have our country, and we need to take care about those who sacrifice their lives, their limbs to protect us. Because I attended to the session of the municipal council, and I was really very embarrassed. I saw there healthy men. They all were wearing traditional Ukrainian vyshyvanka shirts. But they said that we should not argue, that we should live in peace. And they called for understanding, and I was killed by that phrase. They called us that we need to understand that every day our deputies in the municipal council do everything possible to approximate our victory. And that was the end of the session for me, because it was impossible actually to listen to that. The next question, Yevgen. Tell us, please, how do you think, why does not our government provides everything possible to our army? And shouldn't we start from there? That's a good question. The war is very expensive. And I understand, moreover, that the war is the process that repeats every single day. Because everything that we have during the war, all the resources, including humans, are just spare parts. And several days ago, we addressed the Ministry of Defense, Zaluzhny, the medical comment with regard to the situation with tourniquets that we have been facing because of their quality, Chinese tourniquets. And there was a response. But unfortunately, they have made wrong conclusions. And I'm now trying to explain that when it comes to the example of school, the musical school of Stolyarski that was hit by Russian missiles, and all the windows were damaged there. Everyone starting to try to find the person responsible or the body responsible for that school. For example, our municipal council said that this should be the Ministry of Culture responsible for repairing those windows. But let's be honest, courts should not be repaired through this budget of the city. And now coming back to the question about the Ministry of Defense, of course, they should provide everything, but we understand that the scale is really colossal, and I'm not sure that the state can cover everything. And here, the state could receive support from the civil society, volunteers, and charitable foundations. But now, the civil society has a lot of questions when they come to us. When the head of reconnaissance, Budanov, comes out together with charitable foundations saying that we need to collect 140 million for UAVs, and asking people to spend the last money. There is a question. And in parallel, they see that there is now the tender in Kyiv for 1.5 billion hryvnias to create the new road. And we see that the state has money. There are never-ending tenders and procurements. And that's why people just have their questions. And now we could be in a very dangerous situation when both the state will not be able to provide everything the army needs, and the charitable foundations will not be no longer able to cover everything, because we cannot cover even 30% of the army's needs. And we need to understand this. There should be a full involvement of the state. Without that, we will lose this war. And I have a clarification question. We should not talk only about the Ministry of Defense, but the Cabinet of Ministers, and to ask them about the sequestration of the budget is just a general remark. I'd like for as many people as possible to start asking such questions, because to be honest, I still have a lot of work to do. And this is quite an interesting social experiment. And now I'm starting feeling upset. Every day I come to the city council, and 10,000 people, they just like my post. Thousands of people address me saying that I'm a good girl, well done, they're proud of me. And now I feel myself as our soldiers back there in the army, who every day receive the words of support of people saying that they are proud, that they love them. But that's it. And no one just is ready to make the next step. And I would like as many people as possible to find 15 minutes of their time and to make a claim at Prozora for bad tender, or for them to go on a rally to the administration, say that they are not going to stand that, to ask the Cabinet of Ministers, because I don't have time to be everywhere, because I still have a lot of work to do. And I'm proud of my work. And I believe that I do everything I could now. Every day from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. I try to change this city and this country. But I cannot cover everything. That's why it would be great if people do not only support with words, but also with actions, because this is our mutual efforts. Otherwise, we will not be successful. I have one more question. The volunteer movement is the movement supported by most Ukrainians. And with the words of support, with money, and the volunteer movement is highly assessed in Ukraine. Has the volunteer movement supported you? And yes, and if yes, how? How? A lot of colleagues from different cities, they supported me. They signed my statement, my letter, and all organizations, all foundations uh, will continue signing the letter, and it will be giving to the president. As for the volunteer movement of Odessa, to be honest, I have not invited everyone. I've just said that I'm going to be there, but everyone could be in my shoes. Every person can go out and to start doing something, but there are not so many people near the city council on the rally. So people are not ready to do something. Even very active people, environmentalists. And recently we had a huge debate, and I said that our state, and by state I mean our government and other authorities, they did everything possible for the society not to be able to bear this mental burden. And they stop their struggle and they start dealing with their individual issues. And to be honest, during the first year, I was very absorbed with my work. I saw problems inside the army, but I did not see the problems in the country. But there is a very great professional who learned us how to use Prozora, showed us what happens there, and it started with the story with drums, and now the whole society, the whole population is astonished, and we can see that we can affect those procurement processes, those biddings. As a tender for a movie about Voznyuk. So they decided not to spend money for that. So we should believe in our efforts that we can still change something in this country. Otherwise, we will become Russia, and we fight against that as well. One more question. In your letter, you say that there is the necessity of public control. And what are the forms of such public control, except for scrutinizing Prozora website, because I'm talking about the openness of our government, starting with the Cabinet of Ministers and also local authorities like Odessa City Council. We need to create public councils with the Ministry of Defense. And finally, in that council, we can see Dara Yarovaya, and a lot has been done through that public council. And we can see significant changes there. That's why something like that should be created for every ministry and for local authorities. What is it with our broadcast? It's stopped. No, it's already there. And we need people for that, because I will not be able to be everywhere. I can attract attention of people. I could spend 1 hour per day. And you know, today a lot told me saying that they could not be there because they have a lot of work to do. And do you think that I have nothing to do, but still I'm able to find time to be there, to show with my example that we should do something about this situation. And the same could be told about the public control. Someone should do that. And the last question, if you allow. You've never joined any councils, and you understand that you cannot fight on your own. And there could be some people who will try to abuse your name, your reputation. Haven't you changed your opinion? Because back then, it was like 2 years ago. No, I'm not going to join them. And I'm not talking that you will be alone there, that you will be supported by a huge number of people. But you have a great reputation. You're a well-known person. You have a reputation to be able to affect the changes, not only to criticize, because our authorities, they learned how not to pay attention to criticism. Yes, but they're still afraid of that, and I'm sure about that. And I'm not a very open and very public figure, but a lot of issues have been solved during the last year without any rallies. I don't believe that this is correct. I don't like the manual regime. But we managed to solve very important issues without becoming public. As for my involvement in such, so to say, project, no, I have not changed my mind, because I do what I have to do, and I have always positioned myself as a nurse in the combat zone, the combat field. I'm not a general. I need to render support and aid to those people who are injured and who need my support right here and right now. I understand that perhaps this is wrong when it comes to the state structure, because they say that it is better to support thousands and not one person. But perhaps every person has its own task here. And my task is to try to save those who have already fallen. But I hope that there will be people who will undertake another task, namely, who will try to change the system, because otherwise there is no sense in my activity as well. I have one more question. This will be the last question, Evgeny. There are never some last questions, but this will be the last one indeed. And I'm just curious that the voting that took place was very manipulative. Two fractions that said that they are against, they agreed for a package voting. Without their voices, without their support, that was impossible. But that was a packaged voting. How do you think? There is kind of a dual position of some deputies. And maybe you're not aware of the problem. It is difficult for me to answer the question, because I'm really far from this. I understand that this is a very difficult system that they have there. And they tried to explain me how it works during several days, that this is the system of agreements between different people. Perhaps if there will be no war now, I would have not paid attention to that, because policy making is a very difficult process. People need to have consent of different stakeholders, but not now, because every day costs a life of a person. Every day our servicemen are killed there. And if our deputies love to show their love to the city and region, every day we bury our fallen soldiers from our city, from our region. But they still try to solve their own issues, their own problems in their offices. It doesn't mean what party they represent. All of them declare the same, that everything they do for people. But every party declares that. But now I can see that no party supported people. They still try to solve their own issues. And I believe that every day that should be brought to the House of Officers, where funeral ceremonies take place, for them to look in the eyes of the families of the people who are returned from the front line in coffins, and then to bring them to the military hospital next there, to look in the eyes of those people, of those servants who will be injured forever. Because if we don't buy tourniquet for 500 hryvnias, will cost 15 million for the state, and we will pay that money to the killed, to the fallen heroes. the fact that they don't buy 500 turkeys, the evacuation will take longer because we do not have helicopters for evacuation, and evacuation can sometimes take 7 hours. And there is a lack of professional doctors there. And people just lost their limbs because the tourniquets are not taken away from them. And these are the people who tomorrow will get to the streets of the people. And there is no inclusion for that people. And if we are going to construct or reconstruct roads, then we should ensure accessible environment for people with disabilities. Our deputies don't think about this. But at the same time, we repair pipelines for 5 years at one spot. It is very difficult for me to understand such approach. I believe that all normal people during the war try to do everything they do. So if there is the hole in the ship, we are trying to close the hole. We do not wash it or put a beautiful sail. And in our ship, we have a huge hole now. People can wear traditional, beautiful Ukrainian shirts, vyshyvankas, saying that they need to revote the budget. They can do this, but they could start from stopping the tender, which is senseless until the war is over. Thank you for the briefing. From technical issues, we need to stop this now, and you can continue communication of the official finalization of the broadcast. Thank you for being with us today. That was the last briefing in the Media Center Ukraine Odessa for today. Please follow our announcements for tomorrow, Thursday, and the next week.